I thought marrying a billionaire was a fairy tale. But when his sister pushed me and called me worthless in front of 200 wedding guests, I couldn't imagine what my husband would do next. His words didn't just shock everyone, they changed everything forever. Stay until the end, because what happens next will simply blow your mind. Trust me, you won't guess what twist is waiting ahead. My name is Valeria, and just 6 months ago I was an ordinary girl working at Svetlana's cafe on Leninsky Prospect. You know, the kind of place, worn leather sofas, coffee that sits on the stove for too long, and always theists who know more about your life than you do. I couldn't even dream that pouring coffee and serving pies would lead me to the love of my life, much less a world I didn't even know existed. It was a rainy Tuesday when Artyom walked into our cafe through the glass doors for the first time. He looked completely out of place in his plain jeans and white t-shirt, but something about him made me turn around. Maybe it was the way he said thank you, like he really appreciated it, or the way he left a 2,000 ruble tip on a 600 ruble bill. When he asked for my number, I almost said no. Guys like that usually date girls who are nothing like me. Well, Artyom was different. For 3 months, we went on the most ordinary dates imaginable. Movies, walks in Gorky Park, dinners in cafes where paper napkins were used instead of cloth. He drove a nondescript car, lived in what seemed to me to be a modest apartment, and never once made me feel like I wasn't good enough for him. When he said he worked in IT, I assumed he was a programmer. She had no idea I was dating Artem Chernov, the founder of 3 tech companies and one of Russia's youngest billionaires. The truth came out when he proposed. We were sitting on a pier by a lake outside of town, at a house I thought was his friend's dacha. We watched the sunset turn the water gold. When he got down on one knee with a ring that probably cost more than I make in a year, my first thought wasn't yes, it was panic. Suddenly, everything fell into place. The dacha was his. The car he sometimes drove was his, as were a dozen others. And that modest apartment was his guest house. I looked at the man I'd fallen madly in love with and realized I didn't know him at all. When I asked him why he'd kept the truth a secret, he took my hands and said words I'll never forget. I didn't lie about the most important thing, about how I feel about you. Everything else is just details. But he was wrong. Everything else was more than just details, especially for his family. Artyom's mother, Elena Viktorovna, was polite but cold when we first met. She asked cautious questions about my family, my past, my plans for the future. I could see her mentally wondering if I was after his son's money. But his sister, Sophia, made it clear right away that I had no place in their world. Sophia was the complete opposite of me, tall, graceful, with the confidence that comes from never having to check your credit card balance before buying something. She looked at me as if I were something unpleasant she had accidentally stepped on. At our first family dinner, she spent the entire evening talking about people I didn't know, places I'd never been, and things I could never afford. When Artyom tried to engage me in conversation, she smiled sweetly and said something like, "Oh, but Valeria probably doesn't know that." The engagement period was 6 months of walking on thin ice. Every family gathering felt like an exam that I was doomed to fail. Sophia would make barbs and comments about the wedding budget, suggesting that we do it more modestly, since I was not used to events of that level. She would casually mention that Artyom's ex-girlfriend was from a very good family, or how important it was to marry someone who understood the responsibility of wealth. Artyom tried to protect me from this, but I heard the whispers behind my back. I saw the looks. I knew exactly what his family and friends were thinking. That I was a simple girl from a small town who accidentally caught their golden boy. The wedding preparations were a nightmare wrapped in silk and roses. Every contractor seemed to know that I was an outsider. They would turn to Sofia or Elena Viktorovna with questions, looking right through me as if I wasn't there. When I tried to voice my wishes for flowers or music, Sofia would interrupt, suggesting something more appropriate or more elegant.
By the time of the wedding, I felt like a guest at my own celebration. But when I woke up that morning, none of that mattered. I was marrying the man I loved. And no matter what happened next, we would get through this together. The ceremony was incredibly beautiful. Artem had chosen the garden behind his country house, where white roses covered every surface and garlands of lights created a canopy of stars above us. Even in the daylight. As I walked the petal-strewn path with my father, I saw Artem waiting at the altar. And in that moment, all the months of tension and judgment melted away. In that second, there were only us. Our vows brought tears to the eyes of the guests. When Artem promised to love me for who I am, I felt like the happiest woman in the world. Even Sakia managed to keep her tight smile as we kissed and officially became husband and wife. The reception began like a fairy tale. The banquet hall was like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast iridescent reflections on tables decorated with cream and gold scotters. I had never seen anything like it. For the first time since the wedding, I began to believe that maybe I could fit into this world after all. Artem and I danced our first dance to the same song we had danced to in the kitchen of my tiny apartment 3 months after we met. As he twirled me around the shiny parquet, I whispered, "I can't believe this is real." He pulled me closer and said, "Get used to it, Mrs. Chernova." The dinner was delicious. Course after course, the names of which I could not pronounce, was served by waiters who moved so harmoniously as if they were performing choreography. Artem held my hand under the table, pointing out funny details in the guests' behavior, making me laugh until my cheeks hurt. His business partner Lucas gave a touching toast about how true love comes from unexpected places. And even Elena Viktorovna raised her glass, with what seemed like genuine warmth. And then came the moment for family toasts. Sofia stood up, stunning in her burgundy silk dress, holding a glass of champagne high. The room fell silent, all eyes turned to the groom's sister. I braced myself for another polite but cold speech about how I was being accepted into the family. But what I heard changed everything. I had watched my little brother his entire life. Sofia began, her voice clear and commanding in the silent room. I had seen him work tirelessly, build his companies, and achieve what most people could only dream of. Artyom always had impeccable taste in business. She fell silent, her gaze bored into me from across the room, and everything inside me sank. That's why I was so surprised by his choice in marriage. The room fell into a deathly silence. I felt all eyes on me. And maybe they were. Artyom squeezed my hand tighter, but Sofia didn't stop. Valeria seems like a nice girl, really. But let's be honest, what is this? A useless from nowhere who accidentally poured coffee for a billionaire. Some will call it fate, others calculation. Shocked sighs swept through the room. Artyom started to stand up, but Sofia raised her hand. Her voice became louder, more confident, as if she was enjoying the shocked attention. "I'm not finished yet. We all know what this is about. This is not love, this is money." Valeria saw her chance with my naive brother and took it. And now we all have to pretend that this is some great romance, instead of what it really is, a hunt for riches. Her words hit me like a fist in the stomach. Tears burned my eyes. My face was burning with humiliation. The guests around me shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered, covering their hands, but Sofia was still not finished. "I mean, look at her," she continued, pointing a glass of champagne at me. "Do you really think that someone like her belongs to our world? She can barely hold a conversation about anything meaningful. She does not understand our duties, our traditions, our way of life. She is just a simple girl from the diner who got incredibly lucky," Sofia smirked. Artyom jumped up so abruptly that his chair fell over with a crash. But Sofia was on a wave. Her voice was becoming shriller and more venomous. "She will disgrace our family at every turn. Mark my words. In a year, she'll have spent a fortune on things she knows nothing about, embarrassed herself at every major event, and probably gotten pregnant to cement her place. This marriage is a farce, and everyone in this room knows it. The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I felt sick, as if all the air had been sucked out of me. All these months of trying to prove that I deserved to be here, and now Artyom's sister was tearing me apart in front of everyone who mattered in his world. But Sophia didn't stop. She kept going. She walked away from her table and headed toward Artyom and me, cutting through the crowd like a queen walking through her courtyard. When she reached our table, she leaned so close to me that her champagne-scented breath burned my cheek. "You don't belong here," she hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "And you will never be mine, and deep down you know it." And then she did something I didn't expect. Sophia grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin, and yanked me to my feet. Before I could react, before Artyom could move, she shoved me hard in the chest with both hands. I tripped, my heel caught on the hem of my wedding dress, and I fell with a crash onto the marble floor. The sound of my fall echoed through the room like a gunshot. My beautiful dress was torn, my hair was scattered, tears were burning my eyes, and I couldn't hold them back. 200 people saw Sofia Chernova physically attack me at my own wedding. The silence that followed was deafening. I heard the rustling of clothes as guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The clink of glasses being placed on tables, someone's sharp sigh nearby. From the floor I saw faces looking down at me. Some in horror, some embarrassed, and some curiously waiting for what would happen next. Sophia stood above me, breathing heavily. Her perfect composure had finally cracked. Quote, "There," she spat. Her voice trembled with rage. Quote, "There's your place on the floor." And then my husband showed who he really was. Artyom moved faster than I had ever seen. One second he was frozen by our table, and the next second he was standing between me and Sophia. His face darkened with anger that I didn't even suspect in him. But he didn't touch my sister. Instead, he carefully helped me up. His hands were firm and caring, checking to see if I was hurt. Then he turned to the hall full of guests. Quote, "Everyone stay where you are," he said. His voice carried through the room. It wasn't loud, but there was a commanding force in it, demanding attention. Quote, "My sister just attacked my wife," Artyom said. His words cut the air like a blade. "Right in front of you all, at our wedding." Quote, he turned to Sophia, who was still standing at our table. Her face was pale, her confidence crumbling. She had called the woman I love a gold digger, questioned her worth as a human being, and raised a hand to her. His voice grew stronger with every word. There was a controlled fire in it. "I want everyone in this room to understand something about my wife. Valeria worked 2 jobs to pay for college. She spent her weekends helping out at the local soup kitchen. When her neighbor's house burned down last year, she organized the entire village to rebuild it. She has more character in her little finger than most of us have in our entire bodies." He paused. His gaze swept over the crowd, challenging anyone to argue. But even if none of that had happened, even if she had been exactly as my sister accused her, it wouldn't have mattered, because that I love her, and no one, not her last name, not her friends, no one dares to treat her like that in my presence. And then Artyom did something that shocked everyone, including me. Artyom took out his phone and made a call right in front of everyone. "Security? Yes, it's Artyom. Take Sofia Chernova out of the room immediately. No, she is no longer a welcome guest." He fell silent, listening. "I don't care that she is my sister. She just attacked my wife." The room exploded. The chairs creaked. The guests turned to each other. Their voices merged in a wave of shock and disbelief. Sophia's face changed from pale to red, and then again to deathly white. "You can't be serious," she muttered. Her voice trembled. All her previous venom was gone. I've never been so serious in my life, Artyom replied. His tone was cold and unyielding, like steel. Security will be here in 2 minutes. You can leave with them or leave on your own, but you will leave. Quote. But he wasn't finished. I'm also removing you from the board of directors of Chernov Industries, effective immediately. Access to your trust fund is suspended pending review, and consider your invitations to all family events for the next year revoked. Quote. The sighs that followed echoed around the room. In their world, what Artyom had done was tantamount to social and financial destruction. Sophia looked around desperately, perhaps hoping that someone would stand up for her. But the faces looking back at her expressed everything from shock to disgust. No one was going to argue with a man defending his wife from attack. Artyom, please, she whispered, her earlier confidence replaced by a trembling plea. I don't care if she's my sister. My sister wouldn't lay a hand on my wife, he said simply. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. When security appeared, 2 polite but firm men in black suits, Sophia had no choice. She walked out of the ballroom with her head held high, but everyone could see her hands shaking. The click of her heels on the marble floor was the only sound as the crowd watched her go. After she left, Artyom turned to me. He took my hands, his touch firm and warm, and he addressed the room one last time. I apologize for making you all see this, he said. His voice was calm but firm. But I don't regret that it happened, because now everyone knows whose country I'm in. My wife is the most important person in my world. Anyone who has a problem with that can follow my sister. Quote. No one moved. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of what had just happened. Then Artyom turned to me and, in front of all these people, said the words that made me fall in love with him all over again. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. You didn't deserve it, Artyom said. His voice was soft but firm as he looked me in the eyes. But I want you to know something. You're not just a part of my world, you make my world a better place just by being in it. Quote. The applause began quietly, with Lucas clapping at his table. Then Elena Viktorovna stood up, joining him. Within moments, the entire room was on its feet. The sound of heartfelt, prolonged applause filled the banquet hall. It wasn't just polite wedding claps, it was a wave of support that seemed to last forever. In that moment, I knew everything was going to be okay. The rest of the evening was magical in ways I never imagined. Without Sophia's toxic energy polluting the atmosphere, the reception was the celebration it was meant to be. Guests came up to me throughout the evening, sincerely apologizing for what had happened and warmly welcoming me into the ground. During dessert, Elena Viktorovna pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. I raised my children to stand up for what's right. Today, Artyom showed me that I did at least one thing right. As Artyom and I danced our last dance that night, he whispered in my ear, "Are you okay with what I did?" I know she's my sister, but I cut him off with a kiss. You chose love over fear, I told him. You chose us over what people thought. You protected me over keeping the peace at all costs. I have never been prouder to be your wife. Quote. 6 months later, Sophia apologized, having lost everything she thought mattered, her status, her influence, her place in the family, and having to face the consequences of her cruelty. Artyom posted her because that is who he is, but our relationship is different now. She realized that I'm not going anywhere and that her brother will always choose love over loyalty to those who would abuse her. Our marriage is stronger now than it would have been if that night had been perfect. When life tested us, we chose each other and we will always choose each other. That wedding night taught me that true love is not about fairy tales or perfect families. It is about finding a person who will stand up for you when it matters most, even if it costs them something. Artyom didn't just protect me that night, he showed me what it means to be truly loved. If this story touched your heart, please support me with a like and a subscription. It only takes a second, but for me your support is a huge incentive to create further. Thank you and see you soon.